Picture this. It's 70,000 years ago. The sun just dropped below the horizon. The air has gone cold fast. You're part of a group, maybe 15, maybe 20 people. Tonight, for whatever reason, you're not with them. Maybe you wandered too far tracking an animal. Maybe the group moved camp. You got separated in the dark. Maybe nothing dramatic happened at all. Maybe you just ended up on the wrong side of the fire. Slightly apart, slightly outside the warmth of the circle. And something hit you. Not hunger, not cold. Something else. A feeling so uncomfortable, so specifically awful. Your chest tightened. Your eyes started scanning the dark for shapes that weren't there. You didn't have a word for it. You didn't have language sophisticated enough to say, I feel disconnected from the people I need. But you felt it. Completely. Viscerally. In a way that made everything else feel secondary. That was probably the first time a human being felt lonely. And here's the thing nobody tells you about loneliness. We treat it like a modern problem. A symptom of smartphones and social media. The particular alienation of living in a city of 8 million people, where you somehow don't know your neighbor's name. We talk about it like it's a disease of our era. Something that crept in alongside push notifications and remote work. The quiet horror of watching everyone else's highlight reel at midnight. Self-help books frame it as something to be solved. Therapists treat it as something to be processed. The Surgeon General of the United States declared it a public health epidemic in 2023. And all of that framing, however well-intentioned, gets the story exactly backwards. Loneliness is not new. Loneliness is not a glitch. Loneliness is not what happens when modern life goes wrong. Loneliness is older than agriculture. Older than language, older than any civilization you have ever learned about in school. It is one of the most ancient experiences the human nervous system is capable of producing. And the reason it feels so unbearable, the reason it lands with that specific, almost physical weight in the middle of your chest, is not because something is wrong with you. It is because something is working exactly as designed, running a program written into your biology tens of thousands of years ago, by ancestors who had no idea they were writing it. The story of the first human who felt lonely is not a sad story about isolation. It is the origin story of what makes you human in the first place. And it starts not with a broken heart or an empty apartment or an unanswered text. It starts with a fire, a darkening sky, and the sudden terrifying awareness that you are not where you are supposed to be. Here's the thing that will reframe everything you think you know about loneliness. It is not an emotion, not technically, not in the way happiness is an emotion, or excitement, or grief. Those are responses to things that have already happened. Loneliness is something different. Loneliness is a warning system, a biological alarm as old as the species itself, designed not to make you feel bad, but to make you move. To push you, urgently and uncomfortably, back toward the people you need to survive. Neuroscientists have known this for decades, but it has never quite made it into the mainstream conversation. When researchers at the University of Chicago put people inside an fMRI scanner and exposed them to images of social exclusion, something unexpected lit up. Not the emotional centers of the brain, the pain centers. The same neural circuits that fire when you burn your hand on a stove, when you break a bone, when your body registers physical damage that needs immediate attention. Your brain processes being left out the same way it processes being hurt. Not metaphorically, literally. On a scan, social pain and physical pain are nearly indistinguishable, which means that feeling in your chest when you are alone in a crowd, when nobody texts back, when you sit at a table full of people and still feel invisible, that is not weakness. That is your nervous system doing exactly what it was built to do, sending a signal with the same urgency it would send if your hand were on fire. Pay attention. Something is wrong. Fix this now. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. That system, that exquisitely tuned, brutally effective alarm, was not built for the world you live in. It was built for a world where being separated from your group was not an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. 70,000 years ago, the human being sitting alone outside the firelight was not experiencing a bad night. They were in danger. Real, immediate, predator-shaped danger. The loneliness they felt was not their mind being dramatic. It was their body running a survival calculation in real time. Get back to the group or do not survive the night. The pain was the point. The pain was the mechanism. Evolution does not build systems this powerful, this physically insistent, for problems that do not matter. The fact that loneliness hurts the way it hurts is not an accident of psychology. It is a record of how catastrophically important human connection was to staying alive long enough to have children who would feel the same thing and pass it forward, generation after generation, all the way down to you. That first human, the one sitting in the dark 70,000 years ago with their chest tight and their eyes wide, felt what they felt because their brain was doing its job perfectly. The system worked. They went back to the group. And that decision, driven by pain, encoded over millennia into the architecture of every human nervous system that came after, is part of the reason you exist at all. So here's the part where the story should resolve. We understand loneliness now. We have the neuroscience. We have the evolutionary framework. We know it is a survival signal, ancient and functional, built into the hardware. We live in 2024, with smartphones and social media and video calls and the ability to reach virtually any human being on the planet within seconds. We are, by every measurable metric of connectivity, the most linked up species in the history of life on Earth. Problem solved. Signal obsolete. Move on. Except the Surgeon General of the United States did not declare a loneliness epidemic because things were going well. except study after study over the past 2 decades shows that Americans report having fewer close friends than any generation measured before them. Except the number of people who say they have no one to talk to about things that matter has tripled since the 1980s. Except loneliness is now associated with a mortality risk equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We did not solve it. We made it worse. Somehow, in the middle of the most connected moment in human history, we managed to make people feel more alone than ever. That is not irony. That is a clue. Here is what the evolutionary framework actually tells you when you apply it honestly. That ancient alarm system was not built to respond to the number of people you have access to. It was built to respond to the quality and depth of the bonds you actually have. Your nervous system does not care how many followers you have. It cannot be fooled by a notification. It is running a check that is far more specific and far more demanding than that. It is asking whether you are known, whether the people around you would notice if you disappeared, whether there is anyone in your life who holds an accurate picture of who you actually are, not the version you perform, not the highlight reel, the real thing. And if the answer to those questions is uncertain, the alarm goes off, regardless of how many messages you sent today. Which means that person 70,000 years ago sitting outside the firelight and you at 2 in the morning scrolling through a feed full of people living their best lives are running the exact same program. The inputs are different. The resolution is higher. The darkness looks different now, lit blue by a screen instead of black by a sky full of stars. But the signal is identical. The chest tightening is identical. The scan for shapes in the dark is identical. Except now, the shapes you are scanning for are signs that someone out there actually sees you. The ancient human went back to the fire. That was an option available to them. The harder question, the one this generation is living inside right now, is what you do when you are surrounded by fire and still feel cold. Here's what nobody says at the end of a video about loneliness. They give you a list. Call a friend. Put down your phone. Join a club. Volunteer somewhere. And those things are not wrong exactly, but they miss the point so completely, it almost does not matter that they are technically correct. Because the problem was never that you did not know connection was important. You have known that your entire life. The problem is that knowing something intellectually and feeling it in your body are 2 completely different experiences operating on 2 completely different systems. And the system that runs loneliness does not respond to information. It responds to reality. So here is the thing worth sitting with instead. That first human who felt lonely, the one in the dark 70,000 years ago with no word for what they were experiencing and no framework to put around it. They did not feel that feeling because they were broken. They felt it because they were wired for something real, for actual presence, for being seen by people who had genuine stakes in whether they lived or died, for the kind of connection that is built not in a single conversation but across thousands of ordinary moments shared in the same physical space over years. That is what the alarm was calibrated for. That is the specific frequency it is still listening for. And the reason so many people feel it going off constantly in a world full of other people is not because human beings have gotten worse at connecting. It is because the conditions that used to make deep connection almost automatic, shared physical space, genuine interdependence, the daily low-stakes contact that builds trust without anyone trying, those conditions have quietly disappeared for a lot of people without anyone deciding they should. You are not lonelier than your ancestors because you are weaker. You are lonelier because you are running ancient hardware in an environment it was never designed for, doing your best with a nervous system that is looking for something the modern world is genuinely not great at providing. That is not a personal failure. That is a structural mismatch. And the first step to doing anything about a structural mismatch is seeing it clearly, without shame, without the story that something is wrong with you specifically, without the exhausting performance of pretending the alarm is not going off. That first human made it back to the fire. They survived. They passed the wiring forward. And somewhere in that chain, across 70,000 years of people feeling exactly what you have felt and finding their way back toward each other anyway, you ended up here, still running the same system, still feeling the same signal, still, on some level, looking for the fire. That is not a flaw in your design. That is the whole design. And the fact that you feel it at all means the system is working. It means you are built for something more than this. You always were.